Intro. What's up, YouTube? It's Thetajem here with another knife video for Packanack Large. This time, I'll be doing a more proper walkthrough for knife locations on Map A. I have another video you can watch that explains this in better detail, but to summarize, there are 4 different versions of Packanack Large, and you can tell which one has loaded by the location of key items. For this map, we can see that we have the phone box at the main cabin and the power boxes down at the lower left. Special thanks once again goes out to Geekboxing for the maps I use for these videos. I couldn't do these without him. The website for him is in the description below. Each version of Packanack Large has 20 knife locations that don't change. In the past, I've referred to these as guaranteed knives. In other words, you don't need to know which version of the map is loaded to know that these knives will be there 100% of the time. If you'd like to know the locations of all 20 of these, I plan to do a walkthrough in the future. I won't be collecting any in this video though. Instead, I'll be collecting what I call cabin knives. Depending on the map that is loaded, the cabins are kind of shuffled around a bit, and therefore, the knives may seem more random. But they're not. To some degree, you can help yourself by remembering cabin names. Should you find a cabin with a name you recognize, take note of the knife locations, as the next time you see this cabin name, you'll know where they are. For example, a solid weld lodge will always have one knife inside the front door and one on the outside on the bathroom portion of the house. Puopolo's cabin and Rod Felders' house may look the same, and they both have 2 knives, but Rod Felders are inside the front door and in the hallway, and Puopolo's are on the front of the house on the right, and on the corner by the back door on the inside. And judging by the video that I've captured here, you're just going to have to trust me. This is Puopolo's cabin. Knowing these things may spark your memory over the locations of other knives, or at the very least, it can help you to make beelines to their locations and move on. As I hypothesized in my first video about knives, Map A has 21 possible cabin knife locations, with only 20 knives appearing in any given match. So don't give up when a crumb cabin doesn't have a knife behind the right door on the inside. It will next time. Trust me. So the JSON I like to use for these videos is part 6. Since I'm only navigating the roads around camp, I feel like the ability to shift more often makes these walkthroughs go faster, but to be honest, part 6 is kind of my favorite anyway. Regardless of map configuration, when I'm doing these walkthroughs, I will always start at the same place and take the same general course through the camp. This is certainly not the fastest route to all the cabin knives, and it's not meant to be. My hope is that it makes these guides easy to follow, since I will always start at the same location. If you find a faster route or have tips to collect knives effectively in a real game situation, please post them in the comments below. You can never have too many knives, and the purpose for this video is simply to show you where they are. So as you've already seen, I start at the lone cabin alongside Hodder's Path. On every version of this map, this cabin has 2 knives. Here, they spawn on both ends of the cabin. On Map A, I morph to the side nearest Hodder's Path, then walk around to grab the knife off of the bathroom. From here, it's a bit of a trek to the next cabin knife since we don't have our shift yet. As previously mentioned, I always plan to navigate the camp in this same way. By the time I get through all 4 walkthroughs for the cabin knives on Packanack Large, you'll probably know the route I take very well, even though there was no real reason behind it. The next knife on our path is on the back of this cabin on the left side. It's quite close to a guaranteed knife just next door, and another across the street. When playing in a real match, if it loads Map A, I typically grab these 3 at the same time. But since we're skipping those knives this time around, it's on to the bathroom portion of the next house over, then the rear corner of the opposite side of the same house. Next, I like to cross the street, and this is the first cabin we'll come across that has a name. It's Pfeiffer Flat. Here you'll find a knife on the front of the cabin to the left of the front door, and another one just inside. In a previous video, I sped up the footage so as to get as much content as possible crammed in, and I realize now that it's quite hard to learn anything that way. You may be trying to play the game alongside the video, and to do that, you'd constantly have to pause and rewind. The gameplay in this video is not altered in any way, So even if I were to do something ridiculous, like get stuck on a rock or a stop sign, I promise I won't edit it out. The pathway outside to the left leads to Woodberry, and that will be our destination soon enough. But first, Perry Pavilion is next door, and it also has 2 knives. These appear on this corner on the inside of the house, and another on the right side of the rear face. For these walkthroughs, I'm playing offline bots on the easiest possible setting. This way I won't get attacked by counselors too often to slow things down, and most of the doors will remain unlocked. From here, I like to morph to Woodberry, even though it's so close. Typically, my morph is to the car, as that's a common thing to do in-game, and I should not have missed my morph. Truth be told, I got lazy because I was trying to do this video quickly so I wouldn't have long periods with no dialogue, but I guess I need some practice. This unnamed cabin here has a knife on one of the hallways inside the front door, and a second one, you guessed it, on the bathroom on the outside. And look here, I'm paying for missing my morph location now because I have to waste my shift to avoid Chad's flare gun. Fuck me, right? As you've no doubt noticed, there are very few places that cabin knives spawn, so even if you have no plan to memorize these maps, I'm sure just watching them will help you to know where to look for knives. For this version of Packanack Large, the middle cabin here at Woodberry does not have a knife, so we can skip it for now. Next up, a wasted morph where my shift should have been, and Puopolo's cabin. As mentioned earlier, Puopolo's has 2 knives you can retrieve. The first being on the front of the cabin to the right of the front door, and the second on the corner nearest the back door. Looks like I had a little bit of trouble grabbing it that day. Now I'm paying for wasting my morph, as I have to sit here with my machete up my ass waiting for the cooldown period to end. Okay, here we go. My next stop is the lone cabin on the windy portion of the road. Other versions of Packanack have 2 cabins here. You'll notice differences in the map the more you look at them, but on Map A, this is Solid Weld Lodge. As we know, the knives here are just inside the front door and on the bathroom. The knives that appear on the bathroom portions of all these houses will always appear in the same spot for each cabin, but it's really not worth memorizing. If you just remember that there's one there, just keep an eye out and you'll find it. There are only 6 knife locations left, and they're all at Flat Rock, but again, I have to wait for my morph to come back before we can get there. I typically go from right to left with the cabins here, and I think it's habit from back when I was trying to collect all 40 for each walkthrough, until I realized that 20 of the knife locations would be redundant. So, like many of the large cabins, named or not, this first one has knives on the bathroom and inside the front door. I feel like it should be stated at some point that these larger cabins are the only ones that can spawn the Tommy Jarvis house, so that's worth committing to memory too. With no morph and no shift, you're just going to have to wait. I thought about doing these walkthroughs in a private match so I could take advantage of the new game features that give Jason his abilities faster, but then would have that same problem with you guys having to pause and rewind the video to follow along. So just bear with me here, we're almost done. The second cabin at Flat Rock is Rod Felders, which means you'll find 2 knives inside, one on the corner right here just inside the front door, and the other one usually spawns inside the door jamb here. But as you've noticed, we've got 21 knife locations and only 20 knives. This is the one that's missing this time around. Finally, the last stop at Packanack, Crumb Cabin. It has a knife on the front of the house on the right-hand side, and one on the wall behind the green door on the right on the inside. I hope this walkthrough proves to be useful to some of you. It's pretty fun to see how many knives you can collect, and how quickly. This is an amazing way to practice the knife animation cancel. Familiarize yourself with the map, or just be more aware of the knives. Try it a few times. You'll be amazed at how this changes your gameplay as Jason. You'll constantly hear exasperated players asking, "How many friggin' knives do you have?" And as long as you get good at throwing them, you won't ever run out. Cheers, everybody, and happy Friday.